This is the Local Real Estate Developer Podcast, where we share the stories of locals across the country who took that empty lot or that old building and turned it into something awesome that their community needs. I'm Kristi Kandel, and I've been a real estate developer my entire career. My co-host Raphael is a commercial broker, and together we're sharing the stories of locals making a huge impact on their communities. And what we've learned is you don't need millions in the bank or decades of experience to get started. You just need the confidence, tools, and the right people around you. This podcast is your chance to gain the confidence to get in the game, because real estate development isn't just for the insiders anymore. It's for people like you too.
Hey everyone, excited to be back with you in this new year of 2026. I am here, we're located here in Louisville, Kentucky, and this is going to be actually a dual podcast between the Local Real Estate Developer Podcast and CRE 101. And today I have the honor of having my co-host on the Local Real Estate Developer Podcast, Kristi Kandel, here locally here in Louisville. It's exciting to see you in person and actually finally meet for the first time. We've been obviously doing the podcast for quite some time, and it's really cool to have you locally. So good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. It's funny, I was talking to a couple of friends because I was up in the Midwest for the holidays, and they're like, wait, you've never met? And I'm like, no, I haven't. So this is our first time. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, I feel like we've obviously known each other for a good amount of time just through meeting each other online, but this is definitely the first time we met in person, and it's been a really cool experience to kind of show you around Louisville and see some of you could see some of the stuff we're working on, and it's just been, it's been a good time so far. So what I thought we'd do with the podcast was just talk a little bit about how things have been going in our lives. I know obviously we had our final episode of the Local Real Estate Developer Podcast for 2025 recently, and we're really excited to get into 2026 and deliver a lot of value just by engaging with people all across the nation. Tell us a little bit about how your holiday's been going, some of the stuff you've been working on, and we can dive into the rest of the podcast.
Yeah, I'm actually on a little bit of a road trip myself, kind of meandering around the Midwest. And part of that is to see family and hang out, but also part of it is to do some market research to kind of get an idea for one of our projects we're doing, which is Elevate Southwest Florida and St. Pete. So we've toured a couple that were here today, but just kind of checking out different sports and wellness and entertainment facilities and seeing how other places in the country are doing it.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's a really cool project. If you guys aren't already following along with their Elevate project, you guys do daily releases of updates.
Every single day we are posting an update. Yep.
That's amazing. And what day are you on right now?
Day 132.
There you go. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And the amount of progress you guys have made in a short period of time is pretty impressive. And obviously there's a lot of roadblocks and hurdles you guys have faced, and you guys are ultimately going to get to where you need to go. But it's really cool to see your commitment to delivering that product to the marketplace, because I really do think it's going to be of value, and showing people that it's possible by these daily snippets. And as we'll dive into some of the rest of the projects that we're working on locally, the goal for some of them is to deliver an understanding of how these projects work so that it inspires other people to take on projects in their own local community.
Yeah, a lot of times we'll talk about development and people think that means once you see a shovel in the ground and things start going vertical. And part of why we're doing daily updates for Elevate is to say there's a whole lot of work that happens before you ever put a shovel in the ground. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of that in site selection and building partnerships and putting the right teams together and just even building the local relationships. So that's what we're trying to do in a short, easy to understand way, and just put the updates out there. And
yeah, that's amazing. And again, it kind of goes to show the nuances of development. And you drive by these places, and sometimes you look at a building, you're like, why has it been sitting the way it has been when this new person bought it a year ago?
Yep.
It's like all this type of stuff that goes on in the background that people don't consider. So but that's great. And it's awesome that you're able to kind of, and you live in Florida and obviously make your trip to see some family here in the Midwest. And I don't know if you're going to be going to Tahoe this year. Are you? You were mentioning.
I'll go back for a little bit this year.
Yeah, but you got a lot going on in Florida too.
There's more than enough going on with Elevate that'll keep me on the East Coast most of the time. So probably take a month out to Tahoe. But yeah, like we've said before, I'm kind of a reverse snowbird, and so I go to Tahoe in the winter and snowboard, and I come back to Florida the rest. That's one of the benefits of being a developer and an entrepreneur, is that as long as you have Wi-Fi, you can work anywhere.
And you built a portfolio yourself and everything, which enables you to do some of that stuff, which is really cool. But one of the reasons why it was great to have you come down was, obviously we're working on some projects locally, and I really wanted to put some eyes on it because, again, we're excited about the projects, and with the amount of experience that you have in construction, it was just good to get your take on some of the stuff that we're working on. And, just to give you some guys from perspective, you came in earlier this morning, and we actually grabbed some lunch at a building that we purchased last year, and we were able to kind of rezone the property, identify a tenant. We placed the tenant in there, and ever since then, we've had that building in a submarket here that's called Shelby Park.
Yeah, and we've talked about it, and it's a whole other thing when you get to experience a market. I absolutely love going and doing site tours like this because everything we've talked about is like, oh, that was this place. Oh, that was those hurdles. That's where this happened. So I have thoroughly enjoyed today's trip and kind of seeing everything.
No, and the cool thing too is what we touched on is this particular property was a house that was zoned office residential. We converted it to commercial, and from what you described, it seems like in Fort Myers as well, there are several of these projects that have popped up that used to be houses that then got converted into restaurants, and they're kind of in areas that are walkable, and the areas are turning more commercial, and it creates this kind of a momentum for the area. And that's kind of what we're seeing, at least in this particular submarket in our market. I don't know if you can touch on a little bit on Fort Myers to describe some of the stuff you're seeing over there.
It definitely is starting to go that route to where we're it's called adaptive reuse, and it's just where we take our existing buildings and our structures and we just repurpose them into stuff we would want. So sharing stories like, hey, we took this house and turned it into a restaurant could make a light bulb go off and someone else go, I could do that too. So we are seeing that a lot in the different markets that we're in.
Yeah. And the cool thing about some of these projects too is that they're they're approachable for a lot of restaurant users, because obviously you see the big box restaurants that are in the 3,000, 4,000 square foot space, but typically the rents that you'd have to pay for those spaces are pretty significant. So that means the revenue you have to generate is going to need to be at a higher enough level to where you can justify those rent payments. But some of the cool things about some of these adaptive reuse projects, especially with some smaller spaces, is you can get into some of these spaces for a rental rate that's achievable for a lot of restaurant owners. But when you look at the price per square foot, which is what a developer has to kind of consider as they're going in to justify some of the expenditures of these developments, it makes sense. So that's where I think that's kind of where we've been operating, at least recently, in those kind of small to mid-size retail spaces, because we can make the numbers work as opposed to some of these larger entities, some of these largest buildings.
And it's great because it works for you as a developer getting in and trying something maybe not necessarily so big to start, but also for that local business to come in and be able to be successful as well. So it's just wins across the board, and the community wins because then they get things that are a little bit closer to them too.
And it creates an ecosystem where now it becomes more of a retail corridor, and that's great for the residents because now you can walk up and down the street. In this particular case, the restaurant that occupies the space is a Cuban bakery. They've got phenomenal pastries, great different types of food. The coffee obviously is amazing. So it's a good additive to the community. You have an entrepreneur that's taking on the ownership of that business, and she's been doing very well. It's kind of cool to be able to do something like that. And granted, I'm just part of the ownership, and don't claim to be the operator of the business, but it's really nice to be able to be at least a small part of seeing the community kind of continue to evolve.
Exactly. And then we went from there, and you're like, hold on, let's just walk and we can go to these next properties, which is really cool in itself because now you already know that area. You already have a successful business and project, and it's like, yeah, it makes sense to maybe go buy this lot around the corner.
Yeah, it's within, I think, a 3 or 4 minute walk. I mean, less than 0.2 miles away. And that's another thing, too, that I'm sure you talk about a lot, and you've talked to a lot of people about, is that invest in the market that you kind of understand, because we already own a building right around the corner. And another unique thing about it, too, is that when you own something in an area that you've added value to, it creates the opportunity to be able to add value to something close by, right? It lifts up the entire area. So the second building that we went and looked at, we're actually 2 buildings right next to each other. One is they're both of them were kind of, one was a workshop and the other was kind of a storage area for a long period of time. And, the long-term vision for that is to do more of a retail complex over there that incorporates a variety of different retail tenants, both either general retail or restaurant and retail. So I don't know if you want to share any insights on what your thoughts were about the property or the area, etc.
I mean, just as we walked into the building and it was bare bones and everything had been exposed, and it's just like, yeah, I can see this here. And it gets me excited because you can see and have that vision for what it could turn into. And then even being outside and seeing the lot and looking around going, wow, this is a huge lot. There's so many things that you could do with this. So it's, to me, this is the fun spot where it is harder for other people to see what that vision could truly turn into. But if you can do that, yeah, it's very exciting. And the way you had shared what your vision was, that was very exciting to see, because it makes sense in this whole area as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. And two, I think kind of going back to the whole idea of the development phases, right? This isn't going to be something that's a 1-year project. This is going to be something that there's a phase approach to it. So the way this is laid out is that there's 2 buildings. One will eventually be demolished and either used as some form of parking, or we're going to be able to rebuild in some capacity. But the main structure itself is going to be the restaurant space in the front, and then we'll also have a woodworking tenant in the rear. But the long-term vision, again, and this is where the multi-phase approach for development comes into play, is that you focus in on the bite-sized pieces to start, and then once the area continues to evolve, and once the area continues to get to a point where that larger development is justifiable, then maybe at that point you can take on the larger project. But stabilization obviously is the name of the game to start.
You're just enough to get to where you can get it stabilized, and then wait for the market and the location to turn, and then it makes sense to pour in a larger investment.
Yeah, have you kind of experienced some of that in your
100%. That is, and so many times we'll look at something and go, oh wow, that's a really cool, huge development. But what you don't see are the years and the phases that came before that, where everyone, like, you're going to bootstrap things to a certain extent. Not everything gets fully funded from the start, and especially in our tertiary markets, to where, yeah, you are going to do those hurdles and, like, take the smaller bite-sized pieces at first, and then it will eventually turn into it, because you're getting the community excited about the area and what it could be, and making sure that the demand will be there by the time you make that investment.
Absolutely. And two, I think one of the things that I appreciate you talking about a lot of the times is that it's not always roses and sunshine, because it's not. I mean, obviously with all these the 2 projects we described, I mean, there were definitely challenges that we faced from the beginning. I mean, prolonged vacancy. I mean, the building that we're talking about that's eventually going to be converted into a restaurant, it's been vacant for almost a year. So you talk about carrying
But
costs.
you have no expenses, right?
The taxes just came out, actually, so that was always fun. And with commercial property taxes, as you know, it's not, they don't get retained in escrow by the bank. You have to pay it all at once, and so you're writing these massive checks to the bank, to the county, and you're like, oh my gosh. But it's part of it. It's just part of the plan, and obviously with this particular properties that we were describing, this is much more of a long-term play. It's not a kind of home run deal from day one. It's kind of, you're betting on the area, and you want to kind of commit to an area. And then if you have enough staying power, then ultimately it will work its way out. And we kind of talked about a little bit recently when we were at the Hawks Corner, which is another place locally that you said, which was great, was real estate is kind of very forgiving over time. It's not always going to be forgiving early on, but it can definitely work out in the long run.
And that's why it's so important to have your cash reserves, to even have other lines of revenue coming in that can give you your cash flow. So that way you can do these longer bets, because those are going to be your 10x returns, your bigger wins in the long run. But you have to have that cash flow and those reserves to make that happen. But that's where also doing multiple projects at once is very beneficial, because they do take time. I mean, they take 1, 3, 5, 10 years to get to their point. So if you just did one and waited, you wouldn't probably see the true benefit of what development could be.
Sure. And so in the way that you've approached it, kind of curious, and this is just kind of out of curiosity, do you typically have multiple projects that you run at one point? Like even now, I mean, you guys are obviously, Elevate's such a big project that you guys are taking on. But even currently you're taking on other projects and other things. So
Yep. So like one of the other things that we're excited to be doing is getting rid of some of our boring properties and turning those into a boutique hotel and creating that destination experience. So like with Elevate, I am more in the driver's seat of, hey, I'm leading the charge on this. And with the boutique hotel in that partnership, I'm more of the behind the scenes of, okay, yes, we'll make the decisions, but I'm not going to be in the daily operation. So I think that's another key part of development, is that you don't have to do everything for every project. And it's like, Elevate excites the crap out of me. So I'm like, I want to be involved in all the details. I want to be talking to all of our different partners and investors and operators. But when it comes to the boutique hotel, love the concept, love what it'll be in the end. I don't necessarily need to be involved in every nitty little detail. And that's the beauty of it, to where you can have multiple streams going and just be like, okay, like that's cool, because those are happening in other states too. So we're still in real estate, but it's happening across the country.
And you're diversifying your location risk, which is kind of an interesting play. Right now, I'm pretty exposed locally, which is fine. I mean, that's where my expertise lies, and ultimately, that's hopefully going to be beneficial in that regard. Now, one thing I'm kind of curious about, and we can elaborate a little bit on this, and then dive into some of the other stuff that we did today as well. But partnership, because I think that's another piece of the puzzle that a lot of people think can be fraught if you don't consider it all the different angles. But it can enable you to take on some of these projects, like all the projects that we just described, and one more that we'll dive into a little bit, are all partnerships. Like I did not take on these projects myself. First and foremost, it's capital. I mean, unless you have an unlimited amount of capital, obviously
everyone runs out of money at some point.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things. And also too, not just the initial capital, but it's the ongoing commitment of carrying costs. Because I mean, as an example, the building that we had initially talked about that became the Cuban Bakery, I mean, that we had to rezone the property.
Yep.
It took almost 12 months. We had to carry the property as we were trying to find a tenant. And with carrying costs come taxes, insurance, mortgage, general maintenance. We had to do some minor updates to the interior of the property just to kind of get it up to a little bit of snuff. And then eventually, engaging with tenants, one of the ways that you're able to kind of incentivize tenants to move into a space is creating a incentive structure. So in our case, we offered a certain amount of free rent for them to come in and do what they would with the space. And so that's another period of time that there's no income coming in. And so I think if you take on these projects on your own, obviously you get all the upside, but you also can mitigate, you help mitigate some of the downside by incorporating other people. But just making sure you like and trust the person that you're dealing with is going to be important. So
yeah, there are so many. At first, I didn't want to have partnerships, and then you realize there is zero chance you will be successful in the long term without partnerships. So it's then understanding how to vet people, and it's getting to know them as a person and figuring out. This is also where I love sports. Most of my partners I also have played sports with, and you get in a tight game and you can start to see how people respond under pressure. But there's ways and questions you can ask. And then also just talking to people who are close to them, people who might have been in business with them before. If they were a landlord, maybe talking to tenants to see how do they communicate. Ultimately, though, you trust your guy. If you see a red flag, like trust the red flag. And a lot of times we want to be all excited, but maybe taking that break to pause and go, okay, is this the right partner? But I would say for all of these different things that we've talked about, like the boutique hotels, it's actually going to be 4 of us partners, and then we'll probably raise capital depending on how big we go. But we've done smaller projects together to where we understand what everyone's strengths and weaknesses and we will flat out say, here is what I'm willing to do and what I'm not. Do we have the right team? Yeah. And we can have those frank conversations to where it's like, there's no feelings being hurt here. It's, does this work or not? This is business. And then also coming up with the operating agreements and different expectations while everyone's happy and going to where when you break up later or something happens down the road and someone's whole life changes, someone gets cancer, someone dies, something will happen. So there will be an ending. But if you have it all written out for how you handle it at that point in time, it takes a lot of the pressure and the stress out.
Yeah, that's huge. And obviously incorporating an attorney to kind of help you. Was it death, disability, disinterest? Was it like some of the...
Yeah, there's like 5 Ds, divorce. Yeah.
So just kind of addressing all that. And to your point regarding, the person, I think one of the biggest things is obviously the communication piece, just from the beginning, setting expectations from there. And then even throughout the process of going through it, just constantly being in touch with them.
We'll write into our stuff, like we'll say, okay, here's the expectations, here's what everyone's willing to do and can do. And we will say every 6 months it can be evaluated, which is honestly probably too short, but we put that in there. But to go, if you're not upholding your end of the bargain, like we could say, okay, well then let's shift this, whether it's cash flow, whether it's equity, whether it's whatever it is, we could shift it based on who's doing what when. Just as another layer of accountability and just...
Hey, can we chat for a second? Since you're listening to this podcast, you're already thinking like a developer. You see the potential in your community, and you're ready to do more than just watch from the sidelines. That's exactly why we created the Local Developer Vault. It's a free resource full of tools, templates, and trainings to help you take action. And here's the best part. When you sign up, you'll also get access to our local real estate developer community. It's full of people just like you who are making real things happen in their neighborhoods. So don't just listen to the stories. Become the next one that we spotlight on our show. The link in the show notes to unlock the vault and join our movement.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, and With the partnerships I have right now, it's just 2 of us in each individual partnership, and I have partners in 3 of the buildings have individual like, different partners.
Yeah.
But, we set up a formal JV agreement,
Mhm.
and with the people that I've gotten into business with so far, they've been great. Obviously, I like and respect them. I think they are honest, and they do what they say they're gonna do, which is very important.
Rare, but
It
very
is rare.
important.
It is rare, but too. I mean, and also just being just giving people grace too, and that's where I think that the sport component is very, very impactful. At least with me, is that there's gonna be times where my partner is gonna pull more weight than me, and there's gonna be times where I pull more weight than my partner. But when we realize that we're on the same team, like it doesn't matter. I mean, there's gonna be and I'm okay with taking the more weight if there's something going on and there's personal things going on, or maybe you have other commitments that are taking more of your time. As long as at some point we kind of level that out, that's okay. But at the end of the day, we're on the same team. We're working to accomplish the same mission. And as long as we both have that type of mentality, and you're honest and you are willing to communicate and have the tough, difficult conversations, because there's gonna be times where you have to have
Yeah.
those difficult conversations. I think, again, in my limited experience, it seems to have
No, it's
noted.
very true. And in one of my newer companies, we just had to have a difficult conversation, and it was just whenever we have those, I remind myself, I go, hold on, pause, and I tell myself to smile, and I go, you're about to grow right now, because every difficult conversation means instead of hiding from it and instead of just letting it be the elephant in the room, you're stepping into it, you're talking about it, you're diffusing whatever it is, and it honestly just brings you closer together with your partners through that, because you were able to have that conversation before things spiraled out of control and
Mhm.
got too big.
Well, often too, when you have those difficult conversations, you play out these scenarios in your head that are so much worse than what's actually going to happen when you actually address it. So I think more than anything, it's just ripping the Band-Aid off
Yeah.
and realizing that
Yeah.
you're eventually just going to make it on the other side just fine.
On that exact conversation, I remember messaging one of the people after, and I said, it wasn't as bad as you thought it would be, was it? No, not even close.
Exactly.
We just needed to have it now to diffuse it, to be
Yeah.
done. There was nothing crazy. It was just, let's set expectations and let's make sure people understand where they're.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that hopefully will now propel you into the next phase of the partnership. And, hopefully a good partner would take that constructive criticism and say, you know what? Yes, this is where an area of improvement that I need to take on and move forward.
Or it helps you vet people out early. Like if they can't take that and we get further down the road, and if for some reason then great, they vetted themselves out early.
Yeah.
I'd rather that than be way further down the road.
And you don't wish ill will on anyone, but like if for whatever reason those expectations aren't being met, it's better that you guys,
Yeah.
Look to do different things, because it's not going to bode well long term
No.
for the situation. So yeah, so that was kind of not a tangent, because obviously it's it's an important part of development. Is just, again, if you're taking on partners, which is oftentimes the case, these are the type of things that are going to be just little nuggets that are going to help you along the way. But yeah, kind of referring to the day to day. I mean, we went grabbed a little bite and some coffee at that Cuban spot. We walked over to the retail complex that we're eventually going to develop. Again, it's going to be a multi-phased approach, multi-year project, but it's kind of in that same sub-market. There's a lot of growth occurring in that area. They're actually going to be converting Shelby Street and Logan Street into two-way streets as well.
Oh.
So that's going to improve walkability. They've already completed most of the project. They should be delivering it, I think, in springtime of this year. So that'll help a lot with walkability. And then after that, we wandered over to Smoketown, which is it's a submarket just north of Shelby Park, maybe a 3 or 4 minute drive away, kind of closer to the hospital district, or Blue Med as they describe it here in Louisville. And maybe we can talk a little bit about that building. And
Absolutely love that one.
Yeah.
Walking up immediately, I was like, these are great bones. This is a great building. Just the understanding why you bought it, where you bought it, how you bought it, and then seeing the inside that.
Yeah,
that one I love. Yeah.
I appreciate that one. I figured you'd enjoy that one. But yeah, it's great. It's a great building.
Yeah.
It really is. It's a fortress. I mean, there's things like cement and brick and 2-story, 5,600 square foot floor plates. I mean, it's a tank of a building, and we got it at a pretty good basis. I had actually been involved in the transaction 2 doors down, so I was familiar with the area.
Mhm.
And my business partner on that project, he owns an electrical contracting company. He had been eyeing that building for a long period of time. And interestingly enough, the way that evolved, and we'll share it too we're doing a case study on that building, so we're going to have video and everything else on it. But in the podcast that we're going to be releasing, it'll talk about the fact that initially what had happened is Fred had approached me about the building, said, "Hey, like I really like this building." And I said, "Yeah, I actually love it too because I sold the building next door, but it was priced way too high at the time." And so I initially represented him on the acquisition as an agent.
Okay.
I said, "Hey, like I think this building could be great. Like I can help you acquire it, blah, blah, blah." So we went through the process, tried to find a tenant, things fell through. And then we were able to negotiate even further with the landlord and got it to a really good basis. And then we decided to team up to take on the project. So that's kind of how it evolved.
Was it through you representing him and you guys just getting closer and closer that
I had known Fred for a little while. We were looking for stuff to do together.
Okay.
It wasn't like it was just out of the blue by any means. But the initial phase of the project, it was definitely him wanting to acquire the building. And I liked the building. I really did. I was like, I sold the building 2 doors down. I know the area very well. And I just approached him. I said, "Hey man, like, do you want to team up on this building?" And he's like, "Yes." And so
done
ended up
and done.
done. So it ended up working out so far. And granted, we're seeing the building in the demo stage right now. It's just a blank canvas, nothing in the building right now. We're actually going to start saw cutting here shortly on the building this next week. So it's going to be very exciting to see that. But yeah, so that whole evolution of that project started with being under contract, trying to find a tenant, couldn't find a tenant, backed out, and ultimately we were able to negotiate a good deal with the landlord. And then we actually were able to find a medical services tenant to take half the first floor, and the second part of the first floor is still available, although we're talking to a few groups and hopefully have one that identified that could be a good fit for that space. So, again, we're just trying to get that building stabilized, and the future of that building upstairs could be either offices, kind of spillover space for the existing tenants, or it could be some form of apartments or Airbnbs or something along those lines.
What do you think timing wise from the time you acquired it to getting even the first tenants open? What do you think that'll be?
The first tenants open springtime of this year for the first tenant. But the second phase is obviously the first floor tenant. It's going to be very dependent on what they need. But again, I think one of the interesting things that you described about partnership is knowing what your skills are. I do a pretty good job of identifying tenants. That's again, I'm a broker. I talk to tenants all the time. I'm pretty diligent about getting out there and having conversations with people. And so I feel like I do pretty well of identifying tenants that could be viable for spaces. Whereas my business partner, Fred, he runs his own electrical contracting business. He's done large scale construction projects, very knowledgeable in that space. And I feel like we complement each other pretty well in that regard. So he's handling a lot of the construction of the interior. And then I'm handling a lot of for example, that building, interestingly enough, is in a flood zone, but we are raising it out of a flood zone by putting in kind of like a platform. I don't know if you noticed that, but on the Domino's side, there was like a little, not platform, but it was concrete.
Yeah.
And it was like a step up. So we're raising it out of the flood zone using that little platform. So that's number one. Number two, because it's located in Smoketown, which is historically a black neighborhood. It was one of the older neighborhoods in the city. It actually qualifies for tax freezes.
Oh.
If you invest a certain amount. Because it's where it's located, the threshold for investment is only 5% of the building value. So, we're going to be investing significantly more in the building than that amount. So I actually was coordinating with the city, had a gentleman come out, took pictures before, and once the project's done, they'll come out and take pictures after, and then they'll freeze the taxes for 5 years on the building.
How did you go about figuring that part out?
I had known about it just through different initiatives in other parts of town. There's different municipalities in the city that can qualify for some of these tax freezes. Well, and there's also sub-cities within Louisville that have their own tax basis or tax administration. So, for example, in Jeffersontown, which is actually where I live, you pay the county taxes, and then you actually pay the Jeffersontown city taxes. And so, in Jeffersontown, in certain that major thoroughfare that runs through the city, if you were to acquire buildings in that area, sometimes the city they have different incentive programs to be able to help you buy the building and then do tax freezes, et cetera. And so I had some familiarity with it in the past.
Yeah.
And so kind of a checklist item when you're walking through these types of projects, like how can I add, for lack of a better word, value? Like what are ways that I can maximize the output of this building? And obviously talking to the local municipality is one of those check boxes, you know?
That early due diligence can open doors, and just describing what you're doing can lead to someone saying, "Oh, do you know about this or this?"
Yeah. Well, too, and funding opportunities as well. Because right now we're doing traditional bank financing for construction, and then we've got a line of credit to be able to handle like a lot of the build out, because we did get a really good deal on the building, and we have enough of equity position to be able to justify the line of credit that we got through this existing bank. But there's also a lot of city programs for funding. Now, right now, there's a lending arm for the city called MECO, or it may have changed in the name, but they have different programs for facade loans, have different programs for there's all these different categories. And so we're filing an application with the city for when funds come available, because our goal is to try to paint the building and maybe do some asphalt in the redo the asphalt in the rear. And some of those programs have favorable financing terms. They're usually they're a little bit cheaper than traditional bank financing, and they're a little bit more not necessarily lenient, but they are more focused in on the mission of what you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
So if you can deliver housing, whatever the mission of that particular entity is. And so we're exploring that as a potential option down the road as well.
Yeah, that's come up in a lot of communities with different people who are trying to do something in their downtown. And it's, there are programs because they want to beautify the downtown. They want your facade. So basically the exterior of your building, if it's new windows, if it's paint, if it's making it a little bit prettier and nice and aesthetically pleasing, if it's creating better parking and asphalt. There are programs like that, and it just comes from asking and talking and getting out there and getting to know your community leaders and what's available.
Yeah.
I'm actually, so in 2 weeks, I'll actually be meeting Jason Duff, who we had on the pod earlier, and we're going to do a tour of downtown Bell Fountain and kind of see some of his different spaces. And I'm going to take a couple other city people with me from the Midwest area and just go, this is what we can do. If we start to invest, if we do projects like what you're doing, what Katie Neeson's doing in Texas, Jason did in Bell Fountain, and like, if we do this, like, it's not just one project and done, like, and you doing this is now inspiring other people to see, maybe I can do this too, or oh, maybe you can partner with me and do this. And this is how we take small little pieces, and then this is what turns into that ripple effect that truly creates the change that we're all trying to do right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're getting to know, like you described, a few things that I think is important to kind of highlight is, one, just getting to know the city officials, to going downtown and just asking questions and being like, hey, can you inform me about all the different programs that are available? Kind of starting to build those relationships. And, you talk about getting to know the developers in the area. Like, one of the things that we did when we started investing in this submarket is get to know all the people that own the buildings in the area and grab lunch. And we had lunch with a couple of developers that own a couple of buildings just north of this Logan Street market, the market that we had seen just a couple doors down. And they're going to be doing potentially, an office property. There's going to be maybe some Airbnbs and residential that's coming to an area. And that's just insights you gain just by having conversations with them. And also, you kind of build that community with those developers, because you better believe that I'm going to try to support whatever projects they're doing, because I think it's going to be a net positive for the area, and they're going to be advocates for what we're doing as well. So a rising tide kind of lifts all boats. And then you create this ecosystem where everything else kind of starts to take shape.
And that's truly how it works. It doesn't matter if you're working on smaller projects or ginormous projects. Like, that is literally all of these little steps are what it takes.
Definitely. Well, yeah, I know. And so kind of those were kind of the high points of the projects that we were working on. And we kind of went over to Hawks Corner, which is a cool spot here in town. They did a really cool job over there. They literally took like 5 or 6 shotgun homes, knocked down the fences in the back, and then each individual shotgun home is kind of like a retail/restaurant space. And then the back is more common seating, outdoor space. They have a play area over there. And, you'll have to come back in the summertime, because it is packed. I mean, they do a really good job over there. And the gentleman who owns that is actually a restaurateur. He owns a couple of the restaurants in that complex. And then they control like all the drink sales from the main part, which, we talked a little bit about some of the performance of that. It's pretty wild, but again, very novel idea, and it's become kind of a community staple in that area.
And it's projects like that if we showcase, you're not reinventing the wheel. You're using existing structures. You're creating awesome, like, six small businesses, plus then a common gathering area and playground and hangout areas. So now the community's coming in, and you're creating those third spaces that are missing. Like that, I love seeing projects like that in communities.
Yeah. And and to your point, it kind of creates like a spillover effect because now that becomes kind of an anchor for the area. And next door, they just opened up a seafood spot. Further down the street, there's going to be another restaurant that opens up, and it creates this like kind of ecosystem that stems from just one project that kind of was innovative and has been kind of a big staple for that area. And then after that, we went over to Good Bounce, which is a local pickleball concept that, again, you're doing research on trying to open up the Elevate concept in your local market, and you've been going to different markets around the country to kind of gain some inspirations from those experiences that you've had going to these different markets. Like, what are some of the key takeaways that you've garnered that hopefully will help you with what you're doing in Elevate?
Yeah, just so both in Columbus and then here by going to different. So this one was a pickleball wellness facility, but a lot of it was outdoor, and so you could go, oh well, that's super seasonal because no one was out playing padel or pickle or basketball or beach volleyball because it's cold right now. So it's how do you create those spaces where they can go year round? Because if they shut down, now people are going to have new habits and go to different spots, but it's still interesting to see where they're placing these facilities. And we were talking to one of your friends who came by, and they're like, well, they're still doing pop-up events. And so there's ways to get people excited to come to the area. So those are seeing this in all capacities, whether it's packed or whether it's empty, or if they have pop-up events. That's how we figure out, okay, what can we do to make sure this is a 12-month like operating and open facility, not just for Florida, but because we do want to expand Elevate to other markets once we get this. And so really kind of helping us put that whole blueprint together. But even like in Columbus, I went to Smash Park, which has locations in Iowa and Minnesota and I think one other state, but now in Ohio. And that is an indoor-outdoor complex as well. And it's sports bar, pickleball, cornhole, shuffleboard, arcades. And it's really cool to talk, and I'll sit down with the general managers and just kind of understand, what drives your revenue here. Do you do memberships? Do you do drop-in? Do you do court rentals? It's been really fun to be able to, as I drive through different cities and locations, to kind of see what is out there and get a visual on, okay, this is how it's laid out. This is what's working, what's not working.
Yeah, that's great. No, and to your point, I mean, not reinventing the wheel is oftentimes the best way to do it, because I feel like people think you have to do something. I mean, obviously it's innovative what you're doing and that you're delivering kind of a unique offering to the marketplace, but there's all these different components within that broader project that have already been done. So if you can take inspiration from some of these other areas where things have been going well, you're going to save yourself so much time and heartache. And
I am all about that. There is no cheat code, no easy button but the biggest cheat code truly is going to someone who has figured it out and or someone who has failed and knows why they failed. And then from there, you can go, okay, well, let's do this here. So for me, I'm definitely going to a bunch of different food halls, and I have ones on my list because I know restaurants is a hard business. It's a very hard business, but I'm also a foodie. So I want to have the best. So if we can figure out a way to properly run the food hall area to where the business owners can do what they specialize in, we can have the food that we want, but it all economically makes sense. That's what we want to try and figure out and do.
Yeah, it's the narrow sliver of operating costs versus what their revenue is going to be, and we talked about it a little bit at lunch. It is a very narrow sliver, but to your point, I mean, one of the most common small businesses is restaurants. So you have a lot of people that want to manifest that vision into reality. So I think you're going to have the demand. I mean, one of the things we'll see in our local market, and I'm sure that's way in all markets all around the country, is second generation space. Like building out a restaurant is extremely expensive. So if you can deliver a space that's already ready to go, the demand to fit in that space is going to be pretty significant. So,
and if you've created to where you're getting the trips, you're getting the people who are coming through daily, and you've already created that whole hub of belonging and community, then it makes it that much easier for every small business inside of Elevate to then operate and thrive.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. So one thing I want to talk about, which I think is something we both are kind of committed to trying to do more in 26, is the capital raising piece, because this is a pretty ambitious project. It's not going to be something that maybe
$40 million got it in my back pocket right here.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're gonna be having to take on investors and everything like that. So how have you, number one, like thought through the approach of that process, and then number two, maybe talk a little bit about your goals for what you're trying to accomplish?
So for For Elevate specifically, that's our sports, wellness, and entertainment destination. So it's about 10 acres and all in 3 phases, 5 to 6 years down the line, 140 million. The way we're structuring how it's funded is in tiers. One through our typical private accredited investors. One is through our crowdfunding, to where if we need to, it basically allows the community to invest their money, whether it's $500, whether it's $1,000, but you don't have to be accredited to invest in it. And then the third is we'll have some type of, whether it's a public-private partnership with a city or a county and or with nonprofits, because we do want a portion of this to be free to the public no matter what. So it's a super complex capital stack, but it's worth it. Like the whole reason we're doing this project is this is the missing third space in our community. So it is more complex, but it all works together. Lots of nuances and regulations that you have to keep track of. But so to go that route, part of how we're then going about eventually raising the capital and saying, hey, yes, now we're ready for investments, is that we are posting daily and we're giving updates through social media, but then we're also actively going out into our community. So like we pitched to 1 Million Cups, which was St. Pete's local version of like Shark Tank or something, like a business incubator. Not that we want to be able to get the idea out and the exposure in the community. I'll be doing presentations at the Kiwanis clubs, the Rotary, so basically going out into the community and letting people know, hey, we exist. And by doing that, every single time I meet with someone, and just what you were saying, with city officials, with local developers, with the different people in your community, it then opens up so many more doors and opportunities to say, hey, you need to talk to so-and-so, you need to talk. So literally, like, that is what I'm doing, is going out there and just physically meeting with all of these different people. So when we do say, hey, we're ready to raise capital, they already know who we are. They already understand what we're doing, and they have the confidence that, hey, we can deliver. It's complicated, and yes, we can deliver.
Yeah, that's great. And you've kind of mapped out in your mind how you're going to approach that process. And have you guys kind of already formulated how you're going to work with attorney structuring, all that stuff, or is that still working?
So with development, you've got 1,000 balls in the air that you're all pushing forward at the same time. So even though we don't have the land secured, we do have all of these things in motion to go, okay, here's how we'll turn on the crowdfunding platform. Here's how we'll turn on this. So it's having it all there to where it's teed up. So when we have that, we go, let's
You're
go.
ready to go. Yeah, no, that's great. And this is something new for me as well, with because again, all the projects we've taken on locally have been almost 100% our own capital. I mean, the initial acquisition of one of the buildings, we used outside capital, but then we ended up getting them out. So we actually got a line of credit on the building because we paid for it cash, including some of the capital that we had used to acquire the building, and we got our investors out with a profit. So one of the challenges that we talk about all the time is that there's a very limited amount of capital. Like, there's only so much capital you can personally deploy. So in order to take on more projects and make more impact, you have to get to that point where you start working with other people and other capital to be able to take on different projects. And in our case, what we're looking to do potentially is do more like JV opportunities to start, maybe make it so we open it up to more and more people, and at some point in the future maybe take on some more syndication. But again, that's a big goal for myself in 26, and it seems like it's a big goal for yourself in 26 as well. So
yeah, and initially I said I didn't want anything to do with syndications because now you have bosses.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I get it. I understand.
And on our smaller projects, like even the boutique hotels and stuff, that will not be the case. We will be very strategic about who we bring in, but it'll be more of a JV partnership. But with Elevate and it being so massive and complex already, it's like, at that point, we already have so many different bosses and hats and things that we're all wearing that it is a community project that is built by locals, for locals, with locals, and it's just going to take a village to bring it all together.
And in some instances, well, that's one of the only structures you can really take on. I mean, it's unless you go institutional capital or something like that.
Or we have very wealthy people who could do it, but then at that point, are we selling our soul to someone who then can say, well, I gave you all the capital, now you have to do it my way.
Yeah.
And then we lose the exact reason why we did it. Both with whether it is, because there will get to a point when we say, hey, we're going to scale this. We do look at, I don't know, is that private equity the right one? Or are they going to do like some private equity does and squeeze you to death and just go for that 3 to 5 year return, and they kill the whole concept? We're very, very, very cognizant of the type of money that we're accepting.
Yeah, well, and I tell people this all the time, not all money is good money.
Correct.
Just because you can get the money to do it doesn't mean you should take it, because to your point, there's people out there that have different expectations than what the vision is. And if you decide to take their money, then
what strings are attached to those dollars? And that's something that over the years, like I've been a developer for almost 20 years now, and I've dealt with venture capital and private equity, and I've had friends in their businesses and they've exited, and it's definitely not all sunshine and roses and rainbows and unicorns. Like, no, there are some you need to know the terms and the strings that are attached to the dollars. So I'm very grateful to have that experience to know going into this, what do we need to look out for and be cognizant of.
Yeah. Actually, a friend of mine, one of his good friends, started a company, was pretty successful, but there were some disagreements with the entity that ended up, investing in the company, and they actually ousted him
Yeah.
from his own company.
Yeah.
And so he had to go out and start his own company. He's doing very well now. He's a serial entrepreneur, very, very successful. But ever
When you
since then,
out
he's like,
from your baby, that
yeah.
hurts.
Oh, yeah. He's like, I'm never, ever getting into that position again. And granted, I mean, the guy's done very well for himself. But again, lessons learned that you just, and I think going back to that whole point is that you can make an impact without taking on these massive projects. Again, all the projects that we've just described, I mean, outside of Elevate, because that's a massive project, but you can get in for projects 300 grand, 400 grand, $500,000, under $1 million, and you can make a big impact. And you can do that with a very small amount of people. But if you start taking on projects that are going to have more, have more phases and more impact and more cost associated with it, I mean, you've got to have to involve other people. And
this could be just something where start small, do your local development projects that are yours in your community. But like you said, and now you're talking to the other developers, what if a group of you now get together and go, okay, well, let's take this next block or this next section of town and let's come together and do that. That's what can happen when you actively engage and you start small, but it could open those other doors and opportunities. And then, now you're playing a bigger game in a bigger field. But that's at that point, you now have the skills, the resources, the time, and you're like, wait, why would I do this smaller project when I could do this bigger one that could have a bigger impact? And you can take everything that you've learned. So it's understanding that you can start. No one starts at the top. So start small and work your way up, and you just never know where it'll lead. You just have to start.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So, well, I mean, this has been great to, kind of catch up and meet in person and obviously talk through stuff. I mean, one thing I was curious about before we kind of wrap up was related to, obviously this community that we're building with the local real estate developer podcast. We're really excited about all the people that we've been able to interview. We've gotten a lot of great responses from people in the community about, inspiration, and hopefully it enables a lot more people to take on local projects in their community. I mean, what's your vision for wanting to kind of expand that community in 26 and beyond?
Yeah, I've loved everyone we've had on the pod. And like you just said, everyone has said, okay, well, we've had several guests after go, hey, we want to meet up. We want to meet in person, maybe walk projects, but like we want more developers like us, because I feel like I'm the only one in my community doing it. So I would say a goal that we want to do for this year is let's host a meeting. Let's figure out where it's at and let's get it together. And it can be something simple to start and be like, hey, it's a day thing or whatnot. But eventually I would love it to grow into this awesome platform and community of local developers across the country that we're the bigger pockets of local development. But yeah, I think we should start small and just say, hey, we're going to do a meetup. And I don't care if 3 people show up or if 100 people show up, like, let's just do it.
Well, and I think the Darren Hardy quote, small, positive, consistent action over time adds up to massive results. So it's, start small, whether it's, and again, maybe we knock it out of the park from day one. Maybe we have a meetup or some form of like small conference or whatever, where people can come together, share ideas, and it creates value. And then more people next year say, hey, you know what? I went to this conference or this meetup last year. It was really great. Let's see if we can maybe do it again. And again, it just starts to snowball over time. And we've seen it with other people who have done conferences that, not necessarily specifically related to local development, but that's just how things start. So it's just great to, commit to doing something like that this year, because I think it's going to be a good.
There we go. Let's do a meetup where we get all of you local developers out there.
Yeah, no, we're really excited to do that, and we'll make sure to share more and more information as the months progress. Really excited to be able to continue to build this community, and also for the people that are listening that are on this Commercial Real Estate 101 podcast, you guys are obviously more than welcome as well. It's really cool because we've been able to build a community of brokers, construction professionals, and really people from all across the world.
Yeah, all people that developers work with.
Absolutely. And people too that, one of the cool things about agency as well is that, there's a lot of people that aspire to own investment property themselves.
We say all the time in local developers, like your strategic partners, your architects, engineers, contractors, brokers, lenders, you guys are already in the game.
Yeah.
Just go take on your own project. Get that other source of revenue.
Definitely. Well, I couldn't agree more. Well, Kristi, really thankful you were able to come down. It's really great to meet you in person, as always. Obviously, to finally meet you in person. Really excited to be able to deliver more and more value in 2026, both on the Local Real Estate Developer Podcast and Commercial Real Estate 101. Stay tuned for more information about the meetups that we'll be creating in 2026. I think it's going to be really great to be able to help continue to build that community. And I'm really excited to follow along on the Elevate project. If people want to learn more about you and maybe talk a little bit about or learn more about what you're doing at Elevate, how can they do that?
Just Google my name. You will find, so Kristi Kandel, Kristi Kandel, and whether it's Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever, you will have link trees that take you there. But yeah, if you find my name, you will find us. Yeah.
And we'll make sure to include all our contact information in the show notes as well, so you guys are able to access that as well. So thanks again so much, guys. Really excited for 2026. I think it's going to be a great year in a variety of different ways, but really excited to continue to build this community with you all. We'll see you guys.